Welcome back, focused learners. Today, we're diving into a truly fascinating explainer, and we're bringing some serious energy to this one. We're going to explore the shadows. Specifically, we're looking at why every illicit, covert, or high-stakes field out there is actually bound by the exact same structural constraints. Seriously, it doesn't matter if you're working for a government or operating completely outside the law. The realities of operating in secret are completely universal. To kick us off, I want you to picture something. What if James Bond and a mafia don checked out the exact same manual from the local library? Now, I know it sounds like a totally bizarre hypothetical, right? I mean, you've got two wildly different worlds, completely different sets of goals, ethics, and adversaries. But as we unpack our source material today, you're going to see exactly why these two figures would literally be studying the very same chapters. Because at the end of the day, they are solving identical operational problems. Okay, let's dive into this Shadow Operations Handbook. We'll be covering 1. The Shadow Handbook, 2. Hiding in plain sight, 3. Moving the untraceable, 4. The science of coercion, 5. Clinical violence and deniability, and 6. The laws of shadow physics. Starting right off with Section 1, the Shadow Handbook, Foundational Constraints. If we open up this metaphorical handbook, the absolute first thing we realize is that every high-stakes trade operates under identical limitations. It's really all about the environment you're forced to operate in. Think about any business you've ever worked in. You have to move things and you have to talk to people without your competitors finding out. Well, whether you wear a flag on your shoulder or a gang patch on your jacket, the overarching logistical and human bottlenecks, they remain completely universal. You gotta move resources, you gotta communicate, and you definitely have to avoid getting caught. The motivations might be national security on one side and, personal enrichment on the other, but the day-to-day problems, absolutely identical. So let's move on to Section 2, Hiding in Plain Sight, the physics of operational security. In the shadows, exposure isn't just a minor setback. It's literally the ultimate enemy. Just look at this direct comparison. On one hand, you've got a CIA case officer handling an asset in a hostile capital. On the other, a mafia capo managing a narcotics crew. Despite their totally differing goals, they face a shared structural vulnerability, which is that human beings talk and human beings leave paper trails. The math of human betrayal is just a constant that both operators have to manage every single day. And how do they manage that threat? Well, through compartmentalization. This is the practice of limiting access to information strictly to those who have a critical, undeniable need to know. Because of that cold math of human betrayal we just talked about, both the intelligence world and the criminal underworld are forced to rely on rigid communication silos. If one person goes down, you simply cannot afford for them to know enough to take down the entire network with them. So you end up relying on these highly clinical, often tedious tools. Dead drops, burn phones, pseudonyms, and those strict silos. Hollywood loves to make all this look glamorous and thrilling, but in reality, these are just necessary everyday mechanics used to survive the constant threat of leaving a paper trail. Which brings us to Section 3, Moving the Untraceable, the logistics of illicit supply chains. Now, it's not just about hiding yourself, right? It's about hiding your resources. Moving goods, money, or personnel outside the bounds of legal infrastructure requires incredible logistical gymnastics. Take intelligence agencies funneling untraceable cash from black budgets to resistance movements, and compare that to transnational cartels washing their narcotics proceeds. The techniques used here are structurally identical. Sanctions evasion, smuggling, laundering, it is exactly the same playbook. A really perfect example of this is the use of hawala networks, which are these informal value transfer systems. When the global banking system is completely hostile to your goals, whether you're a covert operative funding a proxy war or a syndicate moving illicit profits, shadow finance architecture like hawalas and shell companies become your only viable option. You just bypass the traditional infrastructure entirely. Because both groups face the exact same parallel roadblock. The bank is going to ask way too many questions. Okay, moving to Section 4, the science of coercion, human engineering. If we strip away the patriotic flag-waving of statecraft and the brutal pragmatism of the streets, we are left with the MICE framework. This brilliantly maps human weakness and exploits it systematically across 4 pillars: money, ideology, coercion, and ego. In statecraft, you might use money to fund a foreign asset, while the underworld uses it to extract protection money. Ideology turns a diplomat, or it demands absolute syndicate loyalty. Coercion means blackmailing a target for a spy, or a shakedown for a mobster. And ego appeals to a target's sense of self-importance in both worlds. Whether you're leaning on a local business owner or turning a foreign official, you are identifying leverage and pulling parallel psychological levers. Next up, Section 5, Clinical Violence and Deniability, Treating Chaos as a Variable. Just look at the bureaucratic precision here. Step 1, reconnaissance and target profiling. Step 2, environmental control and timing. Step 3, clean execution and post-action sanitization. For amateurs, violence is chaotic, right? It's emotional. But a wet work team planning a termination and a high-end cartel hit squad, they treat ballistics, angles of approach, escape routes, and alibi generation with identical emotionless precision. It is purely about managing risk. And when things inevitably go wrong, because they always do, how does the organization survive? Plausible deniability. This is the institutional buffer designed to disavow captured agents and protect the upper tiers of command. Conceptually, this intelligence doctrine is completely analogous to the mafia's rigid insistence on omertà. The goal is identical. You absolutely have to isolate the boss from the street-level operators. The survival of the enterprise depends entirely on mechanisms like absolute loyalty, omertà, sacrificial buffers, and fall guys. Both systems absolutely require that the individual can be cut off from the enterprise the second they become a liability. It's cold, it's highly calculating, and it's universally applied. Finally, Section 6, the laws of shadow physics, the final mask. Let's enter this final chapter and strip away the very last illusion separating these worlds. As the source material so powerfully states, if you strip away all the ideological justifications, you are left with a pure, cold science of survival, control, and secrecy. It doesn't really matter what you tell yourself or what you tell the world. Whether the stated goal is national security on the global stage or just personal enrichment on the black market, the underlying science of how you actually have to operate remains fundamentally unchanged. The crucial point here is captured beautifully in this quote. Power in the shadows has its own laws of physics. I mean, gravity affects us all equally, right? And the gravity of secrecy, human frailty, and institutional survival pulls on the CIA director and the cartel boss with equal, inescapable force. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder today. When you look at how identically these two worlds have to operate just to survive, you really have to ask yourself, is the line between national security and the criminal underworld just a matter of branding? It's a pretty stark thought, for sure, but understanding these universal principles completely changes how you view global covert operations. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking the big questions, and I'll catch you next time.